question. I'll finish off real quick. Next slide. And that's it. I mean, when we're asking the community, what would you like to see in the ideal superintendent for UPISD? It's a very broad question, and so, but the responses that came back were varied responses, and yes, there were some trending responses that we see. And so, with that, I will ask the question: Does our current search firm feel that the numbers of surveys that were put out, that the outreach that we did, was it adequate? Because what we do have is trends based on the sample. Yes.
Hi, I'm Dr. Aaron Weiger. I'm a teacher here at Jeff Silva, and I'm a member of the El Paso Alliance for Just Schools. And our group had a conversation about this question, and we had pretty unanimous agreement that we want somebody who wants to be in this community. We want somebody who believes in public education. And we want someone who's committed to equitable staffing and resourcing for the Jeff feeder pattern and the Bowie feeder pattern that have been poorly served in previous administrations. So that's my comment. If I can ask a question, what are you as a trustee going to do to help us avoid the challenges that we had with the previous failed superintendent?
Sure. And so, I speak for myself, but I think all of us are in tune to this. We all know where we come from. Mm-hmm. We know the weaknesses of the past. And so we know what we are going to try to do to avoid the weaknesses of the past. And
can you be more specific?
Well, last superintendent, we know that we brought somebody in. It was a failed experiment where we brought somebody in who was not a traditional education person, right? That really, that happened before I came on the board, right? He was already in place, but I believe that the selection was really following a more of a corporate model, where you don't have to be a teacher or an educator to be a leader, right? And in the corporate world, that's kind of common, okay? In the school world, it's not so common. In fact, I think we were the first ones to do it, certainly in the state of Texas, right? And so, the thought process, I'm making an assumption here, but based on, there was a board of managers in place at the time who were business people who were really trying to move towards a business operation model at that time. I make assumptions. These are
Well, charter schools, they wanted to charter us.
They followed that model and thought that bringing in a superintendent that's not an educator would be outside of the box type thinking, and that could be something that could work in a public school. And I got to be honest, really for the first couple of years, it was tremendous. It worked very well, but then it fell apart. The wheels fell off the bus. And so going back, I think you asked me what I'm thinking. No, I'm supportive of going back to the education model where we have education professionals, that they be the ones to be most considered. The first two that you sounded off, I'm going to tell you straight up, that's probably the most common response that I'm getting, is people who want to be in El Paso, people who are in tune with their culture, okay, and the specific needs of El Paso. So you're not off base at all with that comment. And in fact, you're pretty right on. And we're all hearing that. And so, that's the purpose why we're doing this. Yes.
Going back to the survey, I looked at the list that's there, and I know the board should work closely to DIAC. I don't see that DIAC have a committee to assist the public, the students, the board, to do the selection for events. Were they denied to have part in selecting or giving their input for the school superintendent?
So the question is DIAC involvement, and so as far as were they surveyed, they may have been surveyed amongst the internal surveys that they had. We didn't do a specific survey that I'm aware of, or it's not posted there to a DIAC member, but were they surveyed? I don't have that answer because I don't have names for who the respondents are for the surveys, right? But I will say this. and this I'm firm on, this is a board of trustees selection, okay? It is our responsibility, this is the one major true role that a school board has. And I think we're all agreeable that it's not something that we're gonna pass on. Now, what we are doing is, we're doing it today, and we did it through surveys, and we did it through what we've done before, is we're gathering information from our communities.
You might want to explain what the DAC is for folks, because they're not.
Yeah, well, the DAC is, because I don't know what the acronym stands in. Well, I'll let you explain that, please.
It's a
You know better than I do.
It's a district-wide education improvement committee that's now representative of the community, administrators, educators, and support personnel. They're the folks that are supposed to vet any sort of policy that is proposed by the superintendent before it gets approved or taken up to the trustees for final approval.
So I'm about to, yes, discussion.
Did the DAC approach you guys to
No.
part of this?
They did not approach any of us, individually, they did not come to us. And again, going back to the concept that it is the Board of Trustees' job to make a selection, and we reach out to hear the voice in order to gather that information for this selection, that's what we followed. So no, we did not purposely reach out to the DEAC. What we did is we sent out surveys, or CASB sent out the surveys. My expectation is we got some in return from them, but again, I can't confirm that because I don't have names, and I'm not going to have those names, okay? But the surveys went out, and I hope that they were included. Yes, ma'am?
Mr. Velarde, when you have this board meetings and you're going to have a second interview on this superintendent, why is not the public invited on this? Is this a closed session?
It will be closed session. And again, we have to maintain the confidentiality of the process. The confidentiality of the process is we cannot name the candidates at this time. Okay, so we can't have a public meeting on it. We will open up in public and we will close in public, but there'll be very little information that comes out unless something happens that we are going to make a motion of some kind.
But to her, as far as the finalists are concerned.
Okay, so at that point, when the finalists, the final two are announced, and I'm going to say this, because even I'm questioning, because I know some districts have, at that point, gone out and have additional community meetings, okay? Once people are named. Is that a possibility to have? It's not on the calendar. It was not something that was recommended to us to Walsh, but it is something that I want to ask, is what happens in that period between, in that 30-day period, okay? Will we have opportunities to, at the very least, have these individuals sit in a public forum and have a say? I don't know, okay? I don't know, and I can't answer that for you, but I can certainly share.
My other question is that the superintendents that we've had have not financially been honest about their doing. How are we going to investigate that individual? Is that going to be an investigation on their private financial background too?
So the search firm is going to do a thorough background investigation into every candidate that is applying for this application. And we are going to have that background check available to us as we consider the applicants. So it is a thorough background check. They are going to go through all the databases that are available to them, right, in the state of Texas in order to the credit check, to get the criminal check, to check against schools because there are checks on school district people, right? And so all of those checks will be conducted and we will be provided the results of all of those. And it will be a part of the information that we receive when we take a look at the applicants and start considering who we're going to rank. So I feel comfortable that we'll have that information and that we'll be able to make the right decision on that sense, because certainly as a board of trustee myself, I have, the ethical piece is something that's hugely important to me, right? And so I am going to be looking at those indicators that might say this person is either ethical or may not.
So as a taxpayer who owns property in the district and pays, property taxes, I was so upset and angry when I learned about Mr. Cabrera making money and starting charter schools while allegedly advancing public education in El Paso. Can you assure us that we're not going to have somebody with that kind of grievous, obvious conflict of interest leading our schools?
I can assure you that we're going to make every effort that we don't hire.
And how will
somebody
you,
like that.
can you build something into the contract to help prevent that?
Contract will, absolutely, I'm going to say the contract is going to, I believe, again, at the end of the day, there's 7 months we're going to come together and agree on a contract, right? Before it's presented, but absolutely, we've learned from the past.
I'm going to approach you on that.
Okay, we've learned from the past. You can go from that. And so, yes, sure, we definitely will make sure that there's going to be language in there that will, bottom line, help us make sure that the superintendent is focused on the job that he needs to be doing. And
Thanks.
is leading the district to pass on. Yeah, that's a lesson. So.
Yeah, just to piggyback on the topic of the contract and the search firm for searching for candidates and stuff like that. I was told, I don't know how accurate this is, but sometimes it's written in the contract where if there's issues with the superintendent and the schools that they were a part of, they have like NDAs and stuff like that where, that information isn't available, right? So it makes it harder for you to sift through like superintendents because that information isn't out there, like if they're involved in certain issues. So given that, it sounds like that would be a difficult process to find someone. And is there something that, when writing the contract, that's something that you can make sure to be aware of? Because we also don't want to be sending people around that are a problem, right?
Well, absolutely. And so when it comes to contracts, we're going to sit down at that point, okay? Again, we have history that is telling each one of us on the board the form and style of language that needs to be in there to allow us to be able to act in violation of a contract, okay? I will tell you one thing that I learned, and this is really one of our greatest challenges, because the most important contract is that first one, okay? Thereafter, they do get amended, okay? They will be, but keep in mind, a contract is an agreement between the superintendent and the district. And once you have stipulation in a contract, it's not easy to remove something or add something, okay? Because if they don't agree, we don't have a signed contract, okay? So that's a big challenge for any board and contracts, okay? So the learning lesson then to all of us is we definitely want to make sure that we have our hands on building this contract, and that we identify those issues that are going to be issues of concern to us in order to prevent. Because it's not just the last superintendent, but the superintendent previous to that also went astray, right? And so we want to make sure that that language is going to be there that helps us to make sure our new superintendent stays in his lane and does the job that he's supposed to do the way that we're asking him to do it, right? And yes, those extracurriculars and all that other stuff that came out, I mean, that was surprising to us too. It was very surprising to me, right? As it all came out. Fortunately, we had a contract in place, okay? And so, again, that contract was put in place before I arrived, before, if you recall, that was put in place under the board of managers. So there was no board of trustee in place at the time of that contract. And then from there, all we could do was renew, negotiate amendments, and at the end of the day, it had to be agreed upon. And so that's where we started.
Yeah, well, it's funny you bring up the, talking about the contracts and, getting the specifics on that. It feels it is kind of insane that a lot of the money just goes to them when they do horrible stuff, and then you have to like buy them out with a lot of money, right? A lot of funds that could be used in other areas.
I don't disagree.
We talk about how there's issues with the schools and things need to be addressed, but all this money is going to that route. on top of that, superintendents are getting paid ridiculous amount of money too. Like, it's
So, right.
just, these are some of the things that should probably be considered. And it does feel a little odd that, you know, we're doing the same systems of searching for these superintendents, and there's always scandals, like everywhere you go with superintendents. And then they get paid so much money. It's ridiculous. Like, and then people talk about how paying them more, you're gonna get better quality, but we're still dealing with this, right?
You're right, and so again, the first contract is the most important contract. And it's that contract that we're gonna have to put our heads together and make sure we stipulate what needs to be stipulated in that, so that we can protect the district from the next superintendent from going astray. That contract language, a lot of it that, when we started reviewing the contract, that I thought might be there to allow us, a hook, wasn't there. And so, when it's not there, it's not there. And so the contract is a very important instrument when it comes to managing that relationship. And so I hear you all very clear, we hear you all very clear, that we need to do our due diligence when it comes to putting together the next contract. But I will also add to it, and hope that you have the faith in this board, that we've also been through what teaches us to make sure that it's that's the best I can do. I hope we get it right. Yes, ma'am.
Why do we have to bring superintendents from other cities and not get one that has grown here in El Paso, knows our school district, what the problems that we have, and that lives here? I think there is enough or a lot of qualified people that can be superintendents that were raised here in El Paso and know our school district and our problems.
Correct. And there's no preordained thing that says we have to bring in somebody from out of town. Okay, there's nothing preordained. And so there's no foregone conclusion yet that that's going to be the case, because none of us have yet gone to that point.
Do they apply for it?
But I'm going to tell you, because I did allude to that earlier, yes. And I encourage that, I want that, because if we do, let's still hypothetical, okay? If we select somebody from El Paso, I want to make sure that they're competitive with somebody from Houston, or somebody from New York, or somebody from another big district. We've got to compare apples to apples, right? And that they can stand up to somebody else, okay, who has that caliber. In other words, I said it earlier, I would love to select somebody from El Paso, but if I do, I want to make sure that person can be competitive anywhere in the nation too.
I think
Okay.
we have a lot of people that are competitive.
I think so too, but
And they know the system
Right.
here, and they can work for the people and the communities, not only for a certain community. And we don't have to inform people from out of town what's happening in our community, because he has lived here in our community, he was raised and everything. So I believe that all taxpayers would be very happy to pay for a superintendent that has been raised and has gone to schools here in El Paso.
a common response is local. It's a common response. I'll give it to you, it's a common response. But again, I want to make sure that when we select, that we are selecting amongst qualified individuals, and we're picking the best of the best. We won't know that if we don't invite people to apply. Okay? We have to invite them to apply. And then, at that point in time, when you have I've got A and I've got B, and we can turn, and they're equally matched, okay? But A is local. I've now created a situation where I can say A is highly qualified, and as highly qualified as anybody else in this country, or at least anybody else who has submitted an application for this, okay? It's an ability to test our selection and to make sure we're getting the best. And again, everything that I'm hearing, we want the best. And so we want to make sure that we have a process that helps us ensure that.
I was going to say, I have met multiple people, teachers, admin, etc., who are coming from Socorro, Isleta, and when they come to EPISD, the common refrain is that they feel like they're going back in time 30 years, and that things are Byzantine and weird and top-heavy, and in need of some pretty significant fixing. I wonder if you have any comment about the possibility of hiring, maybe not from the EPSD, but from somebody who's doing great work from Socorro or from East Lab.
Well, it's absolutely possible. If that person rises to the cream of the crop, it's absolutely possible. Yes, sir.
This is my third session.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed you, okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Let me, yeah,
Yeah, please.
because I know that we've had a lot from up front. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, in talking about the contracts with the superintendent, I'm reminded that the last superintendent actually recruited the attorney that ended up working for him, or the attorney is supposed to represent the school district. The attorney is supposed to represent the board, not the superintendent. So I think that there is a flaw there that needs to be looked at, because that relationship, those relationships, and I've observed very closely, can get very close and intimate, and pretty soon there's not the professional relationship that there should be.
So just to be clear, our staff attorney works for the district, including the superintendent, okay? But we do have an attorney that we have retained that does the work for the board, separate and apart from the superintendent, and separate and apart from our staff attorney. So if ever, and we used it during the last process. When we realized that we had an issue, we did not go to the staff attorney. We went straight to the board, the attorney that has been retained.
Do you have 3 attorneys?
I'm sorry?
Do you have 3 attorneys?
Oh, God, we got attorneys, we have a staff attorney that primarily does the district work, but no, we're attached attorneys for different things throughout the district. The district is so big, so many issues, and we have numerous attorneys that we have access to.
With respect to governance issues?
But as far as governance, right now, we have one primary attorney that we are retained with, that works directly with the board, and directly with the board, that's it. And so when we meet with that attorney on issues that may involve the superintendent, we meet with that attorney and the board alone. No staff is in that room, okay? So that's what we have in place, and it's working. It's working. But the staff attorney that we have on staff, she's a district attorney, and she's responsible for the district matters, including those that bring in the superintendent but are not about the superintendent. Does that make sense?
If I may, this is my third session. Could I?
Make comments?
Okay, so as we did in the other sessions, my name is Javier Miranda. I'm a school teacher in the district since 1987. I started here, and I'm also a Jefferson graduate. So I just want to, if I may, I got my list. I surveyed my colleagues in the district and parents, and I'm a member of the Alliance as well. And these are some of the things that we've come up with. I got a list of 7. Okay, so the post-pandemic trauma is not only relegated to the psychological well-being of our kids, rather, it's also taken an academic toll on our kids. I see it in the classroom, just the reading comprehension levels, and we're not addressing that. So it would behoove us to have a superintendent that has educational experience in the classroom, significant time, not just a 2-year stint and then, go into administration. The next one, environmental racism has been quite rampant in our district, with the Jefferson area and the Bowie area being exposed to environmental issues such as toxic air. And so the next superintendent must be willing to reestablish ties with our community, where, like say for example, Zavala, it's right on the freeway to the Juarez, and they're idling vehicles that are dispensing all sorts of toxins into the air, and our kids are right there, right? And then some members, and Mr. Velarde included, some members of the current board have enabled the corruption of the last 2 superintendents, evident in the trustees permitting the last superintendent to engage in consulting gigs that are antithetical to preserving a public education system. I hear you say that your hands are tied, but you folks extended, allowed him to have 5 consultancies last time. So we would hope that we've learned from our